Basically, to use a lathe for vacuum chuck, you need a few items. Obviously, you need a vacuum pump. You'll also need a gauge to regulate it. You need to get a ball bearing setup that's sold by several companies. Packard sells it, Craft Supply sells it. I'm sure some of you talented people out in the audience here can probably make something like this. It's always a ball bearing with a cone. Fits in the back of your headstock here. Basically a lamp rod, hollow lamp rod. The lamp rod goes through. It has the front piece here that has the vacuum. This actually has a point. The point is only put in there, I believe, just so it helps you center things. You got to take the point out to operate it properly. So I think this setup is probably about $60 just for the bearing and things like that. Just tighten that up best you can. All this does, it allows it when your lathe's turning, this is basically stationary. Okay. There's several different kinds of chucks you can use. This is a commercial chuck. This is by One Way. And basically what we got here, we should be operating now. And this basically allows you to actually work on one side of a bowl. What's really important about it, to most turners anyhow, is getting the bottom, is flipping it over and finishing the bottom, which is very difficult sometimes. That's not actually centered, but that's just working pretty good right there. This little bowl here was, I think I actually started this at a demo at the club one day. This is completely done on the vac if you want to hand that around and look at it. The back was finished on it, the front was finished on it. It's drawing right now. It's only drawing about 15, but it's not actually centered very well. Also, you can get a small one. Same idea. What you should use with a vacuum chuck is use the largest vacuum you can get. I mean, the largest chuck available. Try not to strangle yourself on the cord. You do something like a ball. It would be very difficult to get around. Whoops. You actually got to turn the vacuum on before you turn the pump on. You want to finish different sides of it. Just some of the things you can do with it. This is more or less a homemade vacuum. I actually bought this piece with the rubber on it, but anybody could actually make this. Dedicate a faceplate. You turn a wooden disc true. Put a groove in it. And just glue in the piece. And this will just about draw as much vacuum as the other one will. Various different sizes. I was actually playing around the other day, and this is a collet chuck I use for turning. And I decided, let me see if I can put a little rubber on there and use the collet chuck and make a mini vacuum chuck out of it. It worked okay. I think you get a little air leaking out of the threads and all. But I was playing with a piece of corium. I was finishing up the corium with it. If I can get one of my chisels out here and actually make some sawdust, or actually in this case it can't be sawdust, can it? sure it's centered halfway decent. It's a little rough. I was actually playing with it at home. Oh. You can see. I don't know if you can see what the colors of this. Maybe it's not a good color to pick up the grooves. Let me flip it around and do another one. Actually, I'm doing the other. That's Corian.
You know, Bobby, once you take it off, it's hard to get it back centered again like that. Or you just don't want to take it off till you're done.
No. Usually, what I'll do is I'll keep. Usually use a tailstock. I'll try and get a point on each end. So when I'm turning it like this, I'll try and get a point on one end, and then when you flip it around, you can try and line it up with the points. This isn't a great suction on this. You're probably losing a lot around the side, and you're losing a little bit, but it's good for small work. So you can play around with it a little bit.
Bob, how many pounds goes with it?
I'll tell you in a minute. This is pulling about 22 right now on this, but it's the seal isn't great on it, but it's pulling the vacuum. And give a little quick demonstration of cleaning up like the inside or the outside of a bowl. Let's see. I have a little point on this one, just in the center, so I know where the center is. I think this is probably the chuck that's going to fit best. Let me see.
Bob, what's a good source for the vacuum pump?
I bought mine from One Way. It was expensive, but I really didn't feel like playing around trying to hunt up a pump. I think Craft Supply sells them, Packet sells them. And I think Woodcraft might sell them also, I'm not sure. The things you got to watch out for with the vacuum is if you're working on wood that's really not stable. Like a piece of spalted redwood here, and it has some cracks in it. And I filled it up with some hot stuff, some glue, and actually it will hold the vacuum on. I'd be a little nervous when I got the walls a little thin though on something like this, because anywhere the air can leak out, that's where you're going to lose your vacuum. You also don't want to work on, if you're turning a real thin bowl, the vacuum could actually collapse the bowl. And of course, if you're getting close to the bottom, you got to be real careful you don't go through the bottom, because then it's done. So this should be centered pretty good. Probably pull this off. You want to clean up the bottom of this. It's all very easy. Otherwise, it's kind of a difficult task to do. You do a bowl like this, you might have to make a jam chuck out of wood. I think Ernie was talking about that last year when he was out here. You have to make a jam chuck to fit it in. This just simplifies things, and it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I really haven't had time to play with it like I like, but and the same thing here. You want to finish up a little more on the inside. I left a little mark on the inside so I got an idea where the center is. Bring your tailstock in. You can catch, Gabe. Right? Just about, yeah, Bob can probably get it too, just in case. Bob will do it.
I'll back up. Back to the other eye, you better take it easy.
It just makes some difficult jobs easier. And I imagine this vacuum pump that I have here, I could probably use the same pump for vacuum clamping or vacuum veneering also. Is Gaspar here? Did you remember to bring the Venturi pump? Okay. There's something, it's called the Venturi pump. If you don't have a vacuum, you can use a Venturi pump off a compressor. And I had that originally, and it works, but the trouble is it sounds like a jet engine next to the lathe, because it's all shooting out of the end here. And it's really noisy, and it's not quite as efficient. But there are other ways to do it. What's that? A vacuum cleaner, they claim not, because basically the motors aren't set up for continuous use. But I noticed in Packard, and I think Packard is the one that actually has a setup that's set up to work with a fine vacuum, one of the more high-end vacuums that's more industrial rated. And it has a little ring that goes in the back, and the vacuum tube goes in here and has kind of a ball bearing set up like that, so when the lathe rotates, the vacuum doesn't. So it's basically the same principle.